I think that, beyond anything, the reason why Deskbots are so appealing to me as a deck is because of the imagery of a tiny, pencil-sized robot beating the ever-loving shit out of a dragon the size of a city, and that is hilarious to me. Now, I realise that that has nothing to do with the actual gameplay mechanics, but when you can easily get 20,000 damage on board with a bunch of stationery, the imagery tends to create itself. For those who don't know, the aim of Deskbots is to boost their stats, which all start at 500 both ways, to ridiculously high amounts to OTK the opponent many times over. While definitely a going second deck, there are definitely plays you can make on your first turn with the right hand. Having said that, the deck suffers hard from interruption and can brick at times, but the payoff for drawing well makes it an extremely fun casual deck. So as always, we will cover how the deck works, what the strengths and weaknesses are, as well as how the deck plays while discussing some aspects of deck building that go into it. At the end, there will be some replays showing off what the deck is capable of and how it can work against certain situations and decks. And now, since the Deskbot monsters are literally numbered, let us start with Deskbot 1. And here you can begin to see how the deck works with two really simple effects. It gains 500 in attack and defense for each machine you control, including itself, and if two or more machines are special summoned at the same time while this card's in the grave, you can special summon it. A full field puts this level 1 monster at 3000 attack and defense without any other stat boosts, and that is a small number for Deskbots. The special summon effect can be triggered a couple of ways, both with a pendulum summon and Deskbot number 4's effect, and it being a tuner gives the deck access to synchros including the archetypal one. Now, since it can be a bit of a bricky draw and it can't be pendulum summoned, I run 2 as it gives you access to synchros, and the sheer stat values it can reach make for some hilarious situations. I mean, that can be said about the entire archetype, but that's just how it is. Next is Deskbot 2, one of the best cards in the deck. Not only does it boost all other machines you control by 500 both ways, but if special summoned, it can add any Deskbot card to your hand. It should be immediately apparent that this plus machine dupe means pluses for days and can set you up for the rest of the duel. This is what you will usually summon off of Deskbot 3's effect, which we will discuss in a moment, and is often what you will use to either prep for next turn or to get your scales for a pendulum summon. Getting 3 of these out this way means they gain 1000 each, and any other machines gain 1500. So, combine this with Deskbot 1 for example, and that field of 4 monsters that started out with a combined 2000 attack will now have a total of 8500, if I've done the maths correctly. But yeah, that's just the start. So running 3 of these should be obvious. It's your searcher, your stat booster, and can be used as material for Mrs. Radiant to help you open up some extra deck options, and there will definitely be times when you are doing that. So yeah, run 3. Another monster you absolutely have to run at 3 is Deskbot 3, because being able to search your entire deck and boost stats at the same time would definitely be considered broken if this deck was even remotely good. Its effect is that, when normal summoned, it can special summon a Deskbot from the deck except itself, which is where the number 2 and machine dupe combo starts from. Also, during either player's turn, you can have a Deskbot gain 500 attack and defense for each Deskbot card you control until the end of the turn. Like I said, the first effect enables that combo along with a bunch of others, such as summoning 5 for extra deck material and the spell Trap Destruction. Its second effect though is actually really good, as you can potentially boost a Deskbot you control by 4000 if you have the field spell and both pendulum scales out. Run 3, as you want to see this monster as often as possible, as it is never ever a dead card. The next monster is an absolute beast, but this is only because pretty much every opponent never reads the entire effect. That monster, of course, is Deskbot number 4. While activating its first effect means your opponent takes no damage for the rest of the turn, it's also the one card that can pretty much unbrick any hand. Its effect triggers once per battle upon damage calculation, and allows you to send any Deskbot to the grave to have number 4 gain attack and defense equal to its level times 500, meaning that you can boost it up to 5,000 without any other outside boosts. But then, if number 4 destroys a monster in battle, you can special summon 2 Deskbots from your hand or grave in defense mode as long as they have different names to each other. And I'm sure some of you might have guessed this, but the part that people miss is that neither effect is once per turn. With a bit of setup, you can fill your field so easily, and the revival effect can also trigger number 1's revival effect itself. This can also be used to get cards like number 5 out of the deck for their effects, which is really useful. And not only that, but your opponent has to use up resources to get rid of this, since it pretty much cannot be beat by battle. I run 3, as it can be a good target for number 3 if you brick, but can also be combined with number 1 to summon an Aturia beast on turn 1. Machine duping it also is very viable, as getting 3 out can make it very difficult for the opponent to get past without field wipes. So 3 of these is definitely the way to go. Next is, surprise surprise, Deskbot number 5. The first pendulum in the deck with a scale of 10, its pendulum effect prevents you from pendulum summoning any non-archetypal monsters while it's in the scale, which is an effect all pendulum Deskbots share. Its monster effect pops a spell or trap upon summon, and it gains 500 attack for every face-up Deskbot that you have in the extra deck. Not only that, but if it's destroyed while in the pendulum zone, you can special summon a Deskbot from the graveyard with its hard once per turn effect. Something to note with this is that you can trigger it by summoning another Deskbot 5, something that I've taken advantage of a number of times. Deskbot number 5 is honestly one of, if not the most versatile cards in this deck. Back row removal and destruction, a comeback card if destroyed in the pendulum zone, it can be comboed with machine dupe to destroy up to 3 back row before going into Cyber Dragon Infinity, and it can be tuned with a Sea Monster of Theseus summoned off instant fusion to go into the archetypal synchro. I run 3 because of this, solely because of how many plays it can facilitate. Although it can be slightly bricky at times, these are just so few and far between, and you really shouldn't be too concerned about it. Number 6 has the same pendulum effect as number 5, and its monster effect is actually very similar to that of number 5's as well. It changes a monster's battle position if summoned, and also gains 500 for each face-up Deskbot in the extra deck. Additionally, if it's destroyed in the pendulum zone, you can add a Deskbot from the graveyard to your hand, an effect that is also a hard once per turn. While its level does reduce its versatility somewhat, it still has a lot of uses, although I found myself mainly using it as a scale. Being searchable by number 2 means it can be an easy play extender with a pendulum summon, and its effect on summon can be used when summoned by number 4's effect for the very specific situations where it's useful. I run 2 as it's not as useful as number 5 or the normal summonable Deskbots, but its uses mean that it's worth running in my opinion. The last Deskbot that I run is Deskbot number 8, and yes, that means I do not run number 7 or number 9, but I'll cover that later. But anyway, number 8 has the same pendulum effect as the others, but its monster effect is a little different. It gains 500 attack for each Deskbot in the grave, and can attack monsters twice each battle phase. It also protects all Deskbot cards from card effects by making your opponent target itself before any others. While the attack boost can be really good in the late game, as I'll show later, quite often you'll be summoning number 8 on the first turn for some protection for your other monsters. The double attack is nice when coupled with the first effect, and with some Deskbot number 3s on board, it can become almost as potent as an Ancient Gear Chaos Giant for OTKing. Now I personally run 2, as it can be useful as a low scale as well, but this one can come down to personal preference. For the rest of the monsters in the deck, apart from running 3 Ash Blossom because I have no deck building creativity at all, I also run 2 different engines to help the overall playstyle and consistency of the deck. The first one of these engines is a small Symphonic Warrior one. The engine runs 3 of guitar and 1 copy of mics, Starting with Guitar, its pendulum effect allows you to discard a card to summon a Symphonic Warrior except itself from the deck. It can also summon a Symphonic Warrior from the graveyard when normal summoned, but it's extremely rare that this will be useful. On the flip side, Mike's pendulum effect is irrelevant since you never set it in the scales, but its monster effect is the entire reason that this engine is played. After it's been summoned, then you just straight up get an additional normal summon for the turn, even if he leaves the field. This is extremely useful in the deck for a number of reasons. For example, you can normal summon number 3 twice to get the summon effect off, or you can summon a number 2, machine dupe it, and then summon a search number 3, or at worst, it allows you to summon one of the higher level Deskbots, such as number 5, to go into infinity or to simply act as walls for a turn. Mike's can also be boosted by number 2's effect, so having him out while all 3 are on the field gives him 3800 attack. Additionally, since Guitar is a 7 scale, all Deskbots except number 8 can be pendulum with him in the other scale. For this and a number of other reasons that are just a bit too specific to mention here, this is why I run 3 of Guitar and 1 Mike's. The second engine that I run in the deck is a Kaiju Engine, with the aim being to complement the Ash Blossoms in the deck and help get around some of the opponent's negations and to get around established boards. Leading into the spells I play in the deck in a way, the engine I run consists of 1 copy each of Jizakuru, Gameciel, and Humongous, along with Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. One of the big things that Deskbots struggle with is dealing with an established board. With the Kaiju Engine, you're either going to be able to wipe that board with Slumber, or use it to bait out a negation, and you can then just tribute over the monsters because, you know, Kaijus. Not much more to say about this engine really, other than that it clears the way for Deskbots to just do their thing. Definitely worth considering in my opinion. And that gives us a nice little segue into the spells and traps of the deck. And while I don't actually run any traps, there are some tech choices that I'll get into later. But anyway, beyond Kaiju Slumber, there are a few spells that you'll want to consider when putting together Deskbots, a couple of which I've named already and should be pretty obvious. The first, naturally, is Machine Duplication, and there really isn't much to say here that I haven't said already. It summons up to 2 copies of a machine with 500 or less attack from the deck, which can be any Deskbot except 0-1. This card can be the difference between a bricky hand and getting 20,000 damage on board, and since basically every monster in the deck is a target, run 3. Seriously, there is no reason not to. And then, along with 1 copy of Upstart for a bit of consistency, I also run a copy of Monster Reborn. Again, pretty self-explanatory here, as summoning number 2 gets a search, number 3 can result in a big stat boost, number 4 is a wall, number 5 gets a spell or trap pop. You get the idea. Run 1 of each. Then, along with 2 Twin Twisters that function as spell trap destruction while also being used to either pitch number 1 or to be guitar fodder, the last spell you'll want to run is Instant Fusion. This is because of 2 fusion monsters that you can use to help set up the deck's plays, which are Sea Monster of Theseus and Panzer Dragon. For the cost of 1000 life points, you can either summon a level 5 tuner to use with either Mike's or 5 to go into Deskbot Jet, or you can summon Panzer to either pop a card during the end phase or use it with the former monsters to go into infinity. While not necessary by any means, this significantly raises the ceiling of the deck and gives you more access to extra deck plays. This is why I run 3, but if you decide to only play 1 fusion, you may want to consider dropping the spell back down to 2. And since I'm unoriginal and have no unique ideas, let's use the 2 fusions above to segue into the next section, the extra deck, where I've already mentioned a few monsters, so let's get stuck right into it with Deskbot Jet, the archetypal synchro of the deck. A completely generic level 10, it gains 500 both ways for every Deskbot card on the field, and has 2 effects which you can use 1 of per turn. The first destroys a Deskbot card to summon a Deskbot from the deck, and is the one you will almost always be using as a play extender. The other one lets you destroy a Deskbot card to destroy a card on the field, which can be good, but it is more situational. Not only does he regularly sit at 3 to 4,000 when summoned, but you can utilise the Pendulum Deskbot's effect if destroyed using its effect enabling recovery and some searching as well. Quite often you'll pop a number 5 in the scale to summon back a number 2 for a search and get a stat boost and summon another copy from the deck, although this can also be done except you pop a card on your opponent's field instead. For all of these different reasons and for all of the advantages that Deskbot Jet gives you, I only run one, as you really don't need to summon it more than once. You can also run a Trishula, because it's Trishula and you can summon it, as well as the Naturia Beast as a turn 1 option to shut down your opponent's spells, which is extremely useful against Pendulum decks. Psyframe Lord Omega is also good for hand disruption, and Skylight Red Dragon Archfiend is good for dealing with fields, while also serving as a potential bait for negation, along with being a big beat stick. Another synchro that I quite like is Black Rose Dragon, as quite often you can summon it and then get your board back thanks to the floating effects of number 5 and number 6. You can also use Sayuja and Borreload as quite situational link 4s, although you won't find yourself going into them often unless you know you have follow-up plays. Another situational link is Linkaribo, which should only ever be used if you need to try and buy a turn, which can happen, which is why I run the one of. Beyond that, the last monster that I personally run in the extra deck is Mrs. Radiant, of which I run 2. Getting both out if you go first is a good play thanks to the floating effect, and it can also help to extend your plays by opening up some extra monster zones for the deck. Some pretty good stuff really. And so that brings us to the second to last part of the video, tech choices. So let's have a look at some of the cards you could run in the deck if you'd like. Unfortunately for me, there is a ridiculous amount for this deck, by which I mean 27 cards that I've found. Yeah. And those are just the ones that I've actually found. Anyway, let's start this off with the last 2 archetypal monsters we haven't covered, Deskbot number 7 and Deskbot number 9. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I don't run these 2. For number 7, piercing and forcing your opponent to attack it aren't that useful, since these are things that Deskbots don't really need. For number 9, again, Deskbots don't really need a steamroll effect when attacking, and while its destruction protection is useful as you can pop scales with it, the usefulness kind of ends there. That's just me though, as I have seen decks running these 2, so you may want to experiment with them. Another monster is Speedroid Menko, used as a hand trap in case you have to go first and can't make a good board. Genax Ally Birdman is extremely useful for synchroing, since you can get a full field with no issue, and Glow Up Bulb can perform the same action but as Graveyard Revival, often used to go into Naturia Beast. Speaking of synchros, there are a few other options that you could have in the extra deck. Moonlight can be used to get rid of a problematic extra deck monster, while Ignister can be used to spin a card while also triggering the destruction effects of number 5 and number 6. Naturia Barkian can be used to negate some traps and can also act as a beat stick, and Manifest Horus can be used to both negate a face-up card's effect and gain control of a monster your opponent controls, which is really powerful but it can be tricky to summon. Also, if you decide to use Needle Fiber, you can have Quandux or Formula Synchron to go into some higher level synchros. Along with Needle Fiber, you could also use Summon Sorceress to summon out some of the tuners you have from the deck in order to further enable some synchro plays. Beyond that, you could also have some Xyz monsters such as Crumble Logos for negations, or Sky Cavalry as a turn 1 option alongside Mrs. Radiant, or as monster removal. Then, if you choose to run some of the teched in level 4s, you will also have access to the rank 4 engine like Gear Gigan X for searching, Castell for bouncing, yada yada yada, you'll know the drill for this one. Moving on to some of the spells and traps, Desires can be used to draw power but you do risk getting rid of some combo pieces, and Soul Charge is good for comeback and also triggering Deskbot number 2. Reasoning can be used since there is a huge variety of levels in the deck, and Deskbot number 1 or Glow Up Bulb can make use of Foolish Burial as well. As a more anti-meta card, the new Called by the Grave can be used to get around the hand traps that completely screw over the deck, but it can also reduce your chances of drawing play starters, so that's something to bear in mind as well. The last spell I want to talk about is their field spell, Deskbot Base. The stat boost is okay, but it does contradict machine duplication. And the third effect to banish your opponent's entire hand, field and grave is hilarious, but in no way is practical. The second effect though, that shuffles Deskbots to draw the same amount of cards, can be quite useful, and while I still had it in the deck, it often came in clutch to get rid of some bricky hands. I don't run it now, but it is worth considering. Now, aside from the Solemn Brigade that I'm pretty sure is applicable for the vast majority of decks, there are two traps that I think could have a good place in Deskbots, and those are Fiendish Chain and Infinite Transients. Both have the same effect of negating monster effects, and the reason why this is good is because it can halt an opponent's play and hopefully leave them with only a single monster on the field for you to run over next turn. While traps aren't the best for Deskbots consistency, I feel like these could be useful in some situations. And that's it! If you feel like I've missed out on any cards, please let me know and we can discuss it in the comments. I love doing that. But now, as always, we move on to the last section, which is of course the replays, where we have a look at the deck in action and we can see how it works in different situations. So as always, take it away, me. Thank you, me. We're going to be coming at you this time, guys, with 5 replays. That's right, we got 5 replays. Mainly because Deskbots, well, they don't take very long, their duels. So let's jump into the first one here. We are playing against one of our old decks that I reviewed, Mythical Beasts. And they're going to start off as well as doing the standard shenanigans, you know, getting rid of Jackal, summoning Cerberus, setting Jackal in the scale, etc, etc. I feel as though he could have done more. But, you know, first turn you want to be conservative, you've got 2800 on board. The only problem is you're playing against Despots. So, with this hand we currently have, there's a few things we've got to realise. One, I've got prior knowledge of Mythical Beasts, so we know that if they've got a hand trap, it's very unlikely that they've got it at the moment. So we're pretty much free to do what we want. 2, we have an 03 with Machine Dupe and Symphonic Warrior Guitar in hand, which means, since we don't need the number 8, we have all the engines we need to push for a very easy OTK. So we'll let that play out. The guitar, you know, it activates their effects, whatever, doesn't matter. Deskbot 8 is sent for the effect. You summon Deskbot 2. Doesn't get the effect off, but we can machine dupe it. So that gets the effect off. Mike's is then boosted to 3800, which is really nice. We get the 2 searches, which is what we need. We can then summon again for number 3. And we can go for a very simple OTK. So you can sort of see, even just from this small replay, how the deck works, you know? We're able to push through easily to 2800 body, and one of the Despots didn't even attack. So, you know, that's very, very simple, but it's pretty much how Despots work. You know, didn't even have to go and doing XC's plays or anything like that. So let's jump over to the second replay, where we are playing against, what's the name? Darkest Diabolos, or, you know, Layer of Darkness deck. But the interesting part here is that we are going first. So of course we're going to think, okay, what can we do to set up basically for our next turn? So we don't have our hand trap, Ash Blossom. So we've got to think, okay, what is it can we do? So we summon 03, you know, 02, you know, get the scales going as well to get ready for the next turn. We can then go into, quite easily, just go into Mrs. Radiant. Because what that means is that 04's on board, which means we're quote-unquote protected in battle. Mrs. Radiant can search something, and 03 can boost itself as well. So effects are what we're basically mostly vulnerable to, but that can happen, that's, you know, any case. But in terms of getting through this turn, that's about as good as you get from the hand that we have. You know, we could have used Monster Reborn and done some other stuff, but that's neither here nor there. So he goes on standard shenanigans. Uses Layer of Darkness's effect to, you know, get rid of Mrs. Radiant. However, here we begin to see why and how people don't read Deskbot 4. So we're able to get those both off. And basically from here, you know, we're pretty much all good. Reborn the 02, search what we need, go into a Skull Deep. And as you can see, we get all our draws. In this situation, we don't need to worry about the token. The only thing we need to worry about is whatever virus was searched. So we're not going to need to worry about, an Ash Blossom or a Kaiju or anything like that. So we can send all those back, and in order to basically go through with our normal plays and act as if we're going to be pushing through the virus, because that's what we need to focus on, is making sure that we can push through it and just keep going. So we search out the tuner. Unfortunately he tributes itself, but we use, very cleverly here, we use full force virus against itself. So it destroys all monsters 1500 or less defense, but O3 can boost itself, which it needs to, because we're going to need him in a second. So everything else is destroyed, but because this is Deskbots, we get it all back. And then, here's number 8 coming in clutch with that 4000 attack that we're going to make use of in a moment. O4 is able to, we activate that last, so we can pop Layer of Darkness and everything else is protected. So we can summon back in number 1, both of them. Skulder gets the thing off, and then we Trishula. So we Trishula, so we don't have to worry now. We can just blow away his field, hand, grave, and attack for game. So really simple there, and that's got us what? Nearly 12,000 damage on board. Even after we had 4 cards destroyed by full force virus. So it just goes to show you how potent Deskbots can be. Let's jump over to the third replay now. We're playing against 6 Sams. But the interesting thing here, and the reason this replay is included, is because this shows off what the extra deck side of Deskbots is capable of. Because although, they don't really need the extra deck to a degree, there are definitely situations where, it makes so much difference to have that on board. So here, it finishes pretty well. 4 cards in hand, Solemn Warning set. But at this point, we just got to think, okay, we need to draw him out. Fortunately, we draw 2 guitars, which is very useful. And so here we make use of that because we know we want to get the trap out of the way, because we've got an 0-4 on the field, which means by battle, we're protected. 6 Sams don't have that much monster removal, so to speak. That's just prior knowledge of the deck that I have. So we know we're okay in that regard. So we pop the Solemn Warning. We can attack into that. He protects it from destruction, which is why we don't get the special summons. But here we see what happens when you don't read the card. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. So he's got 2 Shien, a Shogun. His field is stacked. Doesn't matter. Does not matter in the slightest, because we're just going to do this all day. Just going to do it all day. We do 0-3 because we can. But here we see what the deck is capable of in terms of the extra deck. So we use 0-3 to bring out 0-1, because that's our tuner. And then we go into Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend. It allows us to basically just wipe his entire field. Why not? And then, attack, or almost attack for game. However, he decides at the end that no, he's going to go out his way, and someone's back with 2 Shiens to take damage there. But you can see the usefulness of not only Deskbot 4, but how the extra deck can just push Deskbots that bit further and get through situations where they wouldn't be able to otherwise. So number 4, replay number 4. I realise this replay section is probably a bit longer than normal. I'm not keeping a timer or anything. So here, again, this is just to show you how potent Deskbots are, right? Oh, I did not mean to hit swap there. I meant to hit pause. So, we got rid of the Ash Blossom to stop the King of D. Stopped all the shenanigans in place. So now we're making use of Mike's double normal summon. Special to 0-2, search the low scale that we need, because then we can summon out 0-5 and 0-2. And then here, we can pop the face down, get another search, because we haven't used our second normal summon yet. Go into Infinity with 3700 attack, because it's a machine, so it gets boosted. Make that 3900, then we get another normal summon of 0-3, boost 0-1 to 10,500 attack, and attack for game. So, just in case that wasn't clear, we've got an Infinity on board at nearly 4,000 attack, 2 Deskbot 0-3s, and an 0-1 with 10,000 attack on board. This can OTK in a tag duel when you have 16,000 life points. I don't even know what to say there. But now we come to the last replay, and this one is my favorite, just because of, well, you'll see. So, you know, Evil Swarms do their thing, go into Origin, which is a bit of a nasty card to play around with, but that's alright, we can work with it. So we do standard shenanigans, then we use the Instant Fusion to go into Theseus, which have I done that this replay before? Not sure. But Theseus allows us to go into Deskbot Jet with those two. We can then reborn the number 2, which gets us another search, and then we can get, you know, another pop from 05, which is extremely useful. Means we get rid of this trap. However, you know, it's able to search that, which means it now can't be destroyed. So we got to work with that. So we search number 3, ready for next turn. And then we used 04 here to get some more searches and an 03 on board to boost our stats. And right now, just to point it out, 5,500 for Deskbot Jet. 5,500. That's with no outside stat boosts. Like, that's insane. But anyway, he uses Fissure to get rid of that. And here he's just going to go off, I guess, for Evil Swarms, or L Swarms, or whatever you want to call it. He pops the 06 to stop us from pendulum summoning on the next turn, but we're able to get that redraw back. He then returns Deskbot Jet to the hand because it is his biggest danger at the moment, so it makes sense, right? You know, good plays on his regard. But from here we can just go off. Fortunately, we draw into the Gamma Seal, which is why I run the Kaijus, because that, you know, it can just come in clutch so easily. Normal summon the 03, search the 02, you know, just standard shenanigans. Go into a Skulldeet, which allows us to get all the draws, and because we know that he doesn't have any hand traps or anything like that, because he doesn't have a hand, we can just push and go for game here. So summon 06, 05, 02, and just all of the chains. All of the chains. So we switch Ouroboros here to defense, with the sole purpose of letting a lower attack monster attack over it. We pop 06 to get the, you know, drawback to our hand just in case. 02 gets a search, and we summon back an 01 from the graveyard along with Skulldread, boosting all of their stats. So you know, this is what the deck's capable of, you know. And then we go into another Deskbot Jet, well, the same one. Pop that. 05 is going to get its revival effect, summon that out, and so the replay ends because he surrendered, and we have 6 cards in hand, ladies and gentlemen. 6 cards in hand with the potential to go into a rank 2. Or, you know, just total access to the extra deck, basically. Just crazy. Just crazy what they're capable of. If they go off, that's the thing. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed these replays. I hope they showed you how you could, you know, interact, you know, act with different decks and all that sort of jazz. But yeah, that is going to bring it to an end. So I shall hand you back to me, and we shall wrap this video up. And that'll bring this video to an end, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, please remember to leave a like on the video, hit subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. If you feel as though there's something that I've missed out again, just let me know in the comments and I'll talk it through with you guys. I love doing that. I'll continue to be uploading one of these at the end of each month, just because that's how my schedule is working. But if that changes, you guys will be the first to know. So I do hope you enjoyed, and I shall see you all next time. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Sage as always, signing out.